Hi, and welcome to another episode of Women Winning Their Way. I am your host, Clara Capano, and this is the show where we highlight women talking about how they are creating their own path to success and, more importantly, doing it all on their terms. I am really excited because today I have my sister Amy joining us. And, I've always admired my sister. I don't always tell her that. Sometimes even though I'm the baby, I kind of push her around sometimes, but I really do admire her because Amy has done some pretty cool things in her life, especially starting her own company when she was in her early 20s. And I think that that's a really important topic for us because many of you watching might be thinking about starting your own business or taking a chance or venturing out on your own. And it can be scary thinking that you don't have the financial backing to do these things. All you have is your vision, your determination, and a passion for what you want to do. So, with that said, I would love to bring my sister Amy on the stage. Well,
Hi.
Amy, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's the only way we can talk, right?
I know. It's so crazy. So you are living in San Diego now,
Yes, I'm back in
and
San Diego.
you are working as a sales rep, and we'll get through all of those things. But the first question I have for you is when you were young and you were dreaming of success, your future, if somebody said, what do you think success would look like when you were a young kid? What was your vision for yourself?
Um, I don't know if I actually ever thought of success. I know that's where you and I kind of differ on a lot of things. I knew what I wanted to do always since I was young. I always wanted to have a retail store. Always loved it. I love shopping, but that wasn't really the only reason why. I just love being around the retail environment and the boutiques and just products and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I wanted to have a retail store. I would always fantasize about it and what kind. And at first, I thought it would be clothing because that was always my passion. But I never really looked at it as that would be successful, like success. It was just what I wanted to do. That's just what it was.
But I mean, you did at a young age because, even though you might say that I dreamed of success, I never knew what I wanted to do. I sort of had this vision of, I knew I wanted to do something, but I wasn't as clear as you. And, you had this vision. You worked in retail when you were a teenager. So you started learning that trade. You followed through that and worked at several of the popular retail stores when you were in college. And then you decided that you wanted to start your own store. And
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about how you got your vision, because this was back in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were looking to create really didn't exist that much in the day-to-day operations. And so how did you come up with your vision for your store? And how did you work on communicating this vision? Because it was very different.
Yes. I let's see how it all kind of came about. Um, I had this vision, definitely wanted a retail store. I love travel. I always have loved traveled in big cities. So I think in the early 90s, I graduated from college and I loved going to San Francisco and just seeing all the unique boutiques always in New York City or bigger cities than San Diego. And I would get inspiration a lot from there when it came into decorating or just shopping or things like that. And so I wanted to do a store similar to how it would be in a big city. And that was always my dream. And I kind of just felt like I wanted to be back in San Diego. I was in LA at the time. And so I just kind of, I had it all in my head. It's very hard to explain. And I know people do that. They have their passion. They know it. It wasn't a time where I could draw it out or that kind of a thing. I was 25, which seems like a lifetime away or ago. And I just kind of I would look at other stores and I kind of knew the look of the store that I wanted to do. And then honestly, it was one day I was working in a showroom that I had worked in Los Angeles, and the girl who worked there told me that I should meet a friend of hers who had just recently opened a store in the LA area. And so I reached out randomly and came into her store. And the second I walked in, it was like, this is exactly what is in my head. And it wasn't like I was trying to copy or anything like that, because it was always whatever, my
Mhm.
taste or do it differently. But it was candles and ironwork, and I've always loved Gothic architecture, and that wasn't it, but it was a lot of iron and metal and old like vintage style goods. And so that just all of a sudden I started doing antique swap meets and finding one of a kind pieces, and learned the trade shows. And I just, because of my love for Gothic architecture, somehow the word cathedral popped into my head because I love old churches, as you know, and it just kind of was there, and it just happened. I know it's hard, but it just happened, and it
But
was.
don't you sorry to interrupt, but don't you think that's so many people where they have this draw inside of them, and being able to put that into words can be so complicated. And
Yes,
I think that's
definitely.
where so many people give up because they're trying to explain their dreams. Nobody understands their dreams. And so they just give up. But
Mhm.
you didn't do that.
No, because there's certain things that come, like, I think there's a lot of times people will be like, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. But when there's something you really, really want to do, or something you want, I'm very tenacious when I know. Like, it may take some time to get to that point, but like when I know, and there's nothing that's going to take me away from it, or I'm going to make it happen
Mhm.
however I do.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I didn't know a lot about opening a business. I didn't know anything actually about opening a business. I just somehow knew I'd figure it out and it would work. It was a
Mhm.
lot harder than I anticipated, but I lasted 18 years. And so it
Yeah.
was very, very cool. But it was, yeah.
Exactly. So I want to unpack a couple of these things because
Mhm.
one is tell us exactly again what your store was, what you
Okay.
sold, because in what you sold, that was part of the uniqueness. And I
Yes.
would imagine that when you sat down trying to get business loans, trying to open this up, people again didn't understand it. And I'm sure, you probably hit a lot of walls or a lot of people telling you this isn't going to work.
Oh, I did. Yes, definitely. The first thing I found a space in San Diego, and I reached out to the landlord, and he was really nice. He was an old businessman who owned a lot of property in the area that I had, a lot of retail property. Um, and he basically listened to me. I knew that I wanted to do, I was like candles, which at that time wasn't a big thing. Candles were only really in the 60s and 70s and very hippy dippy. And in the early 90s, candles were just starting to be in the market again. And so I wanted candles and candle holders and books and journals and just gifts, basically. And I also remember, like, again, in travel, like visiting Colorado, and there was the peppercorn, and I love home decor and knickknacks and kitchen appliances. So I wanted just an all encompassing of that. And he basically looked at me and thought I was like a 16. I did look very young, and just like, I don't think he really thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And so he kind of was like, okay, well, put together a business plan. I think he was meaning saying it just to shoo me away and didn't think I would come back. So I went home, had no idea what a business plan was. So I talked to my dad, and we basically wrote up a, a paper. It was a report, basically. In school. We had the introduction, what I wanted to do, my 3 paragraphs of how I wanted to incorporate and get this, and then the conclusion. So it was basically like a term paper. And I went back and I turned it in, and I think he was kind of shocked. And then he told me, well, you don't have any money. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's like, what do you have? And I'm like, well, I have some credit cards. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, and I can get a credit line. At this point in time, again, early 90s, banks were more generous in giving somebody young a personal credit line. So I was able to get $10,000 credit line, and I had credit cards, which I don't recommend and advise is the best way to finance a business. However, you do what you got to do. So he was like, you don't have any money, basically. And I was like, I know I can do this. I know. I was just again, tenacious, just explaining my vision and all of that kind of stuff. I know I can do this. So it was around Thanksgiving time. And so he's like, well, let me think about it. And then it always chokes me up because I remember it vividly. It was Thanksgiving and I was home with my dad. And actually, I was out. And then I came home and the landlord had called and spoke to my dad and said, well, I wanted to give her an early present and tell her that I'm giving her the space. So when I got the news, I was like elated. And my dad was like,
Your
well,
dad is pretty cool.
yeah, no, my dad's awesome. And he's like, well, now that you like, if you have, what are you going to do? And all of a sudden I sat there and I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, should I do this? And I was like, what if I don't want to do it in 4 years? This is the first major commitment I've ever done, except moving it, from San Jose to San Diego for school at 17, but like the biggest choice I've ever made. And he looked at me and he's like, so you do something else? And I was like, yeah. So I do something else. Definitely. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take it. And I did. That was Thanksgiving between Chris. I had 3 months and I opened in March and I was successful pretty much for 18 years.
Yeah.
And it ended up being not just me saying it, but the landlord years later came in and told me that I was the best store on the block.
Well, and you were, and we'll get more into, the 18 years down the road. But I think some of the messages I really want people to hone into is, you mentioned this concept of sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And even though, again, putting things on credit cards isn't the best way, when you are going after your dreams, you have to want it more than anybody else because it's your dream, it's your vision. And I think what I want people to really walk away from is there is always an option. And we were very fortunate with our parents to be able to have a lot of guidance and a lot of encouragement, like dad saying, well, you'll just do something else. I remember when I was starting my business and it was mom, when I was worried about, oh my God, what if I can't pay the bills? And just telling me, you're never going to be homeless. But not everybody has the parents to do this. But what I also hear you saying is you had friends that you went and talked to, I know that there were other family friends who helped you with your business plan and put together. How important was it for you to lean on others who knew how to do what you needed to learn what to do?
It was very important because, I think it's always, I may not still to this day, I'm not great at asking for help, or you don't think other people know what you are going through. And in reality, everybody goes through the same exact thing in maybe a different way. But it was very important. Again, I was 25 years old when the whole thing started. And I didn't know how to run a business. I had worked retail. I had worked, on the sales floor. I had been cashier. I've done all those things. I never did buying at all. I'm not good with numbers nor budgets still. So it's very important to ask people. And I think years later, I learned even more the value of hiring people with strengths that you don't have, instead of hiring people that you like or are like-minded, because you end up doing the exact same thing and you don't need that. You need people you need people to do the things that you're not good at doing.
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned in running your own business other than just hiring people who are strong where you are weak?
I learned that even though you do have people helping you and employees and all that, nobody treats it ever the same as you do. You have to be you have to love it. It has to be the end all be all and pretty much the first thing in your life. Even if, I was not married, I don't have children, so I could put it first. But even if you do have that, I kind of feel like it is first because it's 24/7, no matter what. There's so many times, like my store was very heavily driven in candles, personal care products, gift items, tabletop. And there were many nights that I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking, did I blow out a candle? And you can't take who's driving down there at 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure I did. I am. So you just have to know you're giving it 100+% all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, and I think that that's, something that I want to lead into now is because your business, whether it's a retail store, whether you are a consultant, whatever it is, your business does become your baby.
Yes.
And your baby matured to the age of 18.
18.
Just
Yeah.
like, and we would joke about this being that I have an 18-year-old, but you did get to a point where it was time to let go.
Mhm.
And I first of all, I guess I want to ask you, how did you come to that realization? And then we'll sort of talk about what came after that realization. But how did you know it was time?
Well, I didn't want it to be time. I will say that. I probably still didn't want it. Wished I could have it. Um, but my lease was up, and I'd say 5 years prior to that, 5 to 8 years, was when we went through our big recession, and it was very difficult. And I signed an extension of 5 years for the lease, and so I was dedicated to last through the 5 years. And then when that came, things in the industry were very different. It was much harder to get loans and capital. And as even though I was successful, the area had changed some. I needed with after the recession, I needed more money, and I didn't have a way of getting it. I thought about moving the store, but at that time there wasn't an area that I had really thought of wanting to move it. And then you need capital to do that as well. And I kind of was tired, like I miss it, but I miss aspects of it now. So it was kind of just time to let it go. I couldn't sell it because I'm too emotional to everything. And I could not watch somebody else see what they would do to it with it. I mean, it could have been everything, who knows, but I just couldn't watch it because it was
Mhm.
my baby.
Yeah. And so this is what I want to talk about next, because I think we talk about this with parents
Mm-hmm.
and being empty nesters, and
Yes.
how so many parents get to the point where their children leave, go off to college, move on with their lives, and then they hit a wall because for the
Mm-hmm.
last 18 years or 20 years, their family has been their identity.
Yes.
You went through the same thing, even
I
though it
did.
wasn't a physical baby.
Mm-hmm.
This was your identity. Was who you are. And
Yes,
having to let
definitely.
go of that was not easy for you. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about how you grew through that, because I know it was a very long journey. You're probably not 100% through it, but how have you dealt with the
Mm.
idea of finding yourself again?
Um, it was very difficult, actually. You give me all the emotional questions.
I'm just like
It
Barbara Walters.
probably it probably took. I don't know specifically how I went through it. I guess kind of like a loss in a way in time. It was my identity. I was known as Amy the Candle Girl, Amy Cathedral, Amy, like that was it. And so I didn't know. And plus, this was also remember what my dream was since I was 8 years old. I had no other
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to do. I did it. Um, so it took a long time. A part of closing the store, I was offered a job with a really well-known, great candle company, wonderful company, and it got me to move to Orange County, and that was what I felt I needed at the time to move away and just kind of a whole new a
Mhm.
whole new place. So I did that, and then I found after like 4 years, it wasn't quite. I still was just struggling with what I wanted to do. I was working. It was a different type of job. I wasn't 24/7. It was kind of like not a lot of responsibility, which was good for me because I enjoyed that after having 18 years of so much.
But
Um,
before we go on, let's just say you did have insurance. And let's get real. At this stage of our life, insurance is really sexy, isn't
Hugely sexy. Yeah, and vacation time. I mean, the very first Thanksgiving, you know this because I was like, all of a sudden, hey, I don't have to work Thanksgiving. But
it?
I can go somewhere, and we went to New York. I
Mhm.
always wanted to do that. So anyway, it was really hard because I had a great job. I was making decent money. I didn't have to stress, but I still didn't really know if I liked it or if it wasn't really me. I
Mhm.
was kind of bored, to be honest. I was living in an area, I hadn't met a lot of new people, and it wasn't an area I was really grooving with. So it still was very struggling. And I actually worked hard with the friends I did have. And one in particular, the one who I reconnected with, the girl who I walked into her store and knew it was my vision. And she was living in the area and we reconnected. And she told me with her business the same thing. She went through a huge identity crisis and we talked about it. And so that helped a lot. And then it probably took me a good 8 years, to be honest, to really be at the point where I am today in the job I'm doing today, which is, again, my own business, but in a different capacity. And I feel it's what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. And I'm still in the industry and still working with products and buyers. I'm just on the other side, selling to them instead of being the buyer. I'm now the rep.
Yeah. So, well, and I love how, again, you've gone through this and, you made the comment that you moving to Orange County, it's what you needed to do at that moment. And I think, there's a lot in that because sometimes, even though we know it's not going to be our forever reality, sometimes we just need to shake it up. We need a fresh start. We need to, replant ourselves and sort of, see where it goes. So when you were doing this, let's go back, looking at, running your business and, going through all these things. If you could go back in time, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I would have probably found a way to get more capital because it definitely was something to need and work on. It's hard when it is your own thing. Also, like my mom would always say, get a partner. And it's like, I don't want a partner because I also don't want someone telling me what to do because it is my vision and it's very difficult. I'm not saying partners are bad because a lot of times they're fantastic. But it's finding, again, the right one who has your weaknesses and you have their weaknesses. So you balance each other. So possibly doing something like that or earlier in finding the people to work with me who had the strengths that I didn't have. So and a little bit more experience.
Yeah. And I think that, again, we talk about that. We talk about mentors and you're absolutely right with partners because it was your vision. It wasn't like you and somebody else sat down and said, let's create this together. It was yours. And that, is the problem. But sometimes we need to bring in that partner, but you have to do your due diligence to put that together. So I want to throw this out
and
there.
Also try not to be so emotionally attached. That's something that's
well,
I don't know if
I don't know if that's possible when it's your baby. I don't know if it's possible.
I don't know if it is.
I don't think it would have made you as successful.
Well, I also think there's different businesses I think that people can do. If someone is inventing something or creating, not like creating something, and I know that this is a great opportunity. I'll make a lot of money. It'll be wonderful. Then I think you can maybe emotionally step away. I never looked at this because it's not who I am. I don't look at anything as, oh, I'm going to make money. I just I know I need to make money because I need to make a living, but it's more of, it's just what I want to do. And so the money part is second, which is why I think you're so more emotionally attached to it.
I agree. So I want to ask this question, and this could open up a whole can of worms. But, obviously you and I have had this discussion about small business, big box business. And the big box has a lot of that convenience, but how important is it for us to think about our small business owners in our local communities?
It's really important, actually. As a former small business owner, I'm actually now still a small business owner. And it was just recently on our company call that someone had pointed out, because Small Business Saturday is coming up with Black Friday and all of that, which is a wonderful event that American Express promotes for small business. And the reps, someone had posted the thing that reps are small businesses too. And it really is important. I totally understand to a point the convenience, but we're losing shopping or just being anything in a small community. Everybody knows everybody and they support one another, and money spent in there will help every aspect of the community. And it's connections. That's what the big box doesn't have. And what I hate or despise, I should say, hate's a strong word. about the big box. And you know me, I do not shop on Amazon. I will not do it because, not saying not a great company, but in my opinion, they're not. But it just takes away from the people and the connections. And when stores leave, like I had so many people when I love having you here. It's like, wait, you didn't shop. I'm not saying you have to spend a fortune, but
Mhm.
it's just promoting and supporting your local juice shop, your local cafe, your like local grocery store. I mean, prices may be a little bit higher, but in the big picture, it's not going to break the bank.
Mhm.
And we can't compete with the big box in prices, but it's so important. And I will say that the one thing I noticed, I think the one good thing about COVID is that it brought people a lot back to the
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
Um, and I hope it stays that way because you can find everything anywhere, but the small stores in particular will really, they search out unique products that you can't get everywhere. And in today's day and age, no matter where, I mean, I said it again, third, I love traveling, but I hate going somewhere and having it look exactly like where I came from. Like the whole point is to experience something different. And
Mhm.
that's what your community and small businesses do.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say in looking back on everything, opening your store at a young age, going through
Mhm.
that for almost 20 years, closing your store, reinventing yourself. This journey, how did this journey make you stronger as a female business owner?
Um, really strong because I mean, people like you said, they turn you down. I mean, they tell you you can't do something. I mean, in little tiny things of going to Home Depot because I needed to find concrete stain for my floors when I was opening, and the guy looked at me and was like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "Well, I can because I just came from a business that had them, and I will." So figure it, like found it,
Mhm.
did it. But everyone will just kind of poo poo you, especially when it's a vision that nobody understands.
Mhm.
And being a woman, it is harder because they just think we're nuts sometimes. And just another thing, like, oh, they just think daddy or your husband paid for your business so that you just have something to do. And it's like, no, they
Yeah.
didn't.
And I do want to hit on that for a moment because so many people, even though again it's our baby, even though we have to do it, so many people have the financing from their
Mhm.
family, or they have the significant other, or they have money in a retirement account. I mean, you really, even though you have the support,
Yeah, I had a
nobody's
lot of
writing the
support.
checks for you. So all the decisions were made by you, and all the decisions were made by
Hi,
you.
buddy.
So how different do you think it would have been if you would have had that support? Do you think that was a blessing for you? Do you think it worked against you?
um, No, I don't know, actually. I think it really depends on where you're at and who you're with. I mean, it's nice to have the support. It would have been nice if someone just said, "Hey, here's $50,000, do with it what you want." But it also kind of just doesn't make you as, I don't think it makes you as strong because even like going back to kids, like when we were young, you did chores because it's what you do and you get paid a little bit, but you earn it. So it's like everything that I did, I made it happen. Even though I didn't have a lot of money, I did it. You make it work. You just
Mhm.
do. And then eventually it got easier and I was successful and I was able to do more. I had a second location at one time and kind of a third one, and you just do. I do feel it can't help, but I still feel it's better if you just do it all. You just figure it out.
Well, I
You
think
just make it work.
you take on the ownness of it and,
Yes.
working with those. But
Mhm.
like you said, again, if somebody has to go in at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be you.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit because the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is you have to bring in help. So again, whether you own a retail store, whether you're a business coach, whether you're, a real estate professional, at some point in time, you have to hire people and you
Yes.
have to train them and you have to grow them and you have to fire them. So, what were some of the lessons you learned about building your team?
Um, that's harder. I don't know if I actually really learned any lessons. And I hate saying that. I mean, I did. Like I said, probably half. So it was like, maybe 10 years in, I learned to look for people who definitely had the skill set and more marketing. I wasn't great at marketing, or the management of it, like running people, firing. I did hiring was easy, firing not so easy. So I kind of just would bring people in always. With my store, it was very creative. The types of products that I sold were kind of not one of a kind, but you could talk about them and educate people about candles and why they're the scents are this way and stuff. So it was somebody with mainly looking for personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because sales, I mean, you can be taught to sell, but it's not really like, I don't look at anything as selling. I just want like start a conversation with somebody and you're being friendly and open and, oh, this is my favorite. What's yours? What type of thing? Like ask questions. What do you like? And then it just naturally people, they like you. And so they want to buy from you and work with you.
Yeah.
So I think that's the important thing is teaching people to be friendly in retail, if that's what your business is,
Mm-hmm.
and know your business actually, and let them know like your phone number of your store, the website of your store, where you're located, the address. Is like so many times they're like, people will call and they're like, what's the number here? Oh my God, seriously? Or pull out a business card and just look. Like it's just like, come on. So things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Good
So
time.
when you look back on everything, what would you say you are most proud of?
I'm most in life or in just in the like, I mean, I am most proud of that store.
Yeah. So,
Like
but like, what about the store like makes you proud?
that everybody that it was so different. So it's been closed now 13 or 14 years, 13 years. And I still, luckily, because of the industry that I'm in, I do meet buyers who have been around long enough to know my store.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say who I am, or I used to have a retail store, they're like, oh, which one? And I tell them, it still makes me just proud mom.
Mm-hmm.
um, when they like, oh, I loved your store and I shop there all the time. And I'd love for you to do a little store like that in my store. Or I did this because of your store. And one time, one person told me all the stores in San Diego now couldn't have done it if it wasn't for you. You were the first person who did a store like everybody's.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really great.
Yeah, I love it. So, if you were to sit down and be a mentor to a new 25-year-old who came
Yeah,
to you with this crazy idea that nobody had really heard of before, how would you guide them on some of their next steps?
I would first find out about their work ethic.
I know their address and phone
Because
number.
I've seen some of the youth today and I don't feel like they have the strongest work ethic. And I would tell them, I mean, I did have students come into my store sometimes and I would talk to them. And I mean, I would tell them the same thing. I wouldn't push anybody away from it because I would never shy away from your dream. Do it. It's a lot of work. That's what I say. It's not glitz and glamour. I mean, there's times when it was, and it's basically when my customers, for me with the store, the type of business I had, when they would just come in and I love this so much, or I would see something and be like, oh, I know this person's going to love that. And they trust me and just the compliments of it. And I'd watch kids grow up because I had it for 18 years and shopping there. But there was also times when I'm in the back room and I'm like, oh, I hate my job. Like you just
Mhm.
are frustrated. And just know like it is 24/7. It's everything. It's a lot of work, a lot of hard work, but definitely it's fantastic. If you love it, it's great.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So, when you're, kind of looking ahead, you know, what do you think is next for you? Like, do you have any other things on the horizon that maybe you're thinking and looking into or doing?
Um, I have dreams. I have to find out now if they are just dreams or if it is something that I want to do. I have a really strong connection to certain places in Europe that I feel I need to explore more of and maybe possibly live at some point in time. And if not, maybe if not live, maybe spend a certain time of the year there. So that's something where I just really want to work as hard as I can, um, so I can, put away money and see if this is
Mhm.
a reality of what I want to do. There's
Yeah.
also times that I do kind of think about like, oh, would I want to do a little store in a store, but then I kind of am like, no, I don't. Like,
Or do you feel like you're, because you had mentioned again, it's a lot of work. Do you feel like you're at a point where you're like, I don't want to work that hard
yeah,
anymore?
I do. I mean, I'm not at a point where it's like, oh, I just don't want to work at all, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
I still
But
need
to
to make a
start
living,
to
and I like,
create on
huh?
that level, but to start and create on that level.
Yeah, definitely. That I mean, I don't want 24/7. I
Mhm.
just can't do that anymore. And it isn't something that I want to do anymore because I mean, I didn't take a lot of my vacations were my trade shows. And I was lucky enough to be able to go to New York for 18 years, twice a year. And it was great. But there's so many other things I want to do. I just want to be able to do them.
Mhm.
So I don't want something that is going to be 100% all the time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I want to explore more myself and just travel more. That's really what I want to do.
Perhaps getting involved with the community and fighting for small businesses could be something
Could
on the
be.
horizon.
You
Somebody seems a little passionate
never
about
know.
that. Mhm.
I'm very passionate about not shopping
Yeah.
at Amazon.
So we started off the conversation when you were young.
Yeah.
What did you think success was? When you're sitting here now, what is your definition of success today?
Success now would probably be, well, I think I have some of it because I'm able to be living back in my house, and after owning it for 24 years almost, I'm able to do things to it that I have been wanting to do for years. So that to me is part of success. And being very comfortable in my home and just wanting to be here a lot. And success would be if I can spend maybe 3 or 4 months a year in Italy or in Paris. That would be success.
That would be good. That
Yep.
would be good. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Amy, I love you. You're one of my two favorite sisters.
Thank
And we'll get the other one on here too. But I don't always tell you how much I admire you. And I really
you.
do.
As do I.
That word tenacity has always been there. And that is something, we call you the sweet one out of the three of us sisters. And there's some not so
Not
sweetness
as sweet.
under the
Not that I'm
skin there,
over
but
50 now.
it's in a good way. And the thing is that I've always seen from you is your conviction. When you believe in something, when you know it's the right thing to do, you fight for it and you fight hard for it. And you get in there, and you are also not afraid to get your hands dirty, and again, to do the real work. You are a very hard worker, and you do create beauty.
Thank
You do have that ability to see things that others can't see, as far as putting things together and again creating beauty. And I love that you are still helping people do that. I love that you help me do that
you.
in what I do. And I just think I know I'm a better person because I have you in my life, and I've
Thank
always appreciated you, and I do learn a lot from you. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I know that your words today, I know that there's people out there wondering, is it time to let go? Can I do this on my own? And I think your words are going to really resonate and give a lot of hope to people. So thank you for sharing your story.
My pleasure. You
Yes.
can do
All right.
anything.
Okay. Love ya.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. There is my sister Amy. And, some of the things that she pointed out that I just think are such strong messages. You need to do what you got to do to make it work. When you have your dream, there are going to be so many more reasons for you not to do something than there are for you to do something. So you've got to get in there and make it work, because if you don't love your dream more than anyone else, it's not going to happen. And there will be times that you want to give up. There will be times that you are angry. And there's also going to be times where you are so in love with what you're doing. You need to take all of that in, because that is part of the process and part of the journey. I do think something that she talked about as far as leaning into others, you've got to find a mentor. Obviously you can hire people to do that, but you don't have to. Some of my best mentors have taken me under their wing. I was able to have lunch with them, coffee with them, pick their brains. Good people want to help other good people. And there is so much opportunity for all of us. We don't have to be in competition. And when you truly have that passion and you can show someone that you are willing to dig deep and do the work, they want to be a part of that with you, because you're going to remind them a little bit about themselves when they were in your shoes. So ask for help. Another key thing that she pointed in is bring people on that are strong where you are weak. We all love to hang out with our friends, and it's easier to just hang out with those people that we like, but that's not necessarily going to get your company where it needs to go. So bring people in that are going to challenge you, that are going to stop you from making bad decisions, that are going to be logical when you want to be emotional, that aren't going to damper you, but again, are going to allow you to elevate and allow you to stay in your lane and let them stay in their lane. Because when you're all working together, that's where greatness happens. And again, don't worry if you can't articulate your vision today. You've all heard me before. One of my very favorite sayings, the vision comes first, the how will find a way. There's going to be times where you can't put it into words. I made this mistake when I was very young. I remember in my heart, I knew I was born for something bigger. I knew I was meant to be on stage. I didn't want to be an actor, but I knew I was here. I knew I was here to make an impact in the world. And because I couldn't articulate that, and people told me, oh, it's competitive. And, there's so many people trying to do that. Unfortunately, I listened to those people instead of doing what my sister did and listening to her heart. And here I am 25 years later, starting out when I could have been there 2 decades ago. So don't worry that you don't have it all figured out today. Every day, take a step forward, research it, go out there, interview people that have done something similar to yours. I guarantee you can find people who can open doors and really give you the guidance that you need. So remember, we are here to help women win their way. So no matter where you are, don't give up. Don't lose sight of your dreams. Don't give in to the sadness, to the overwhelm, and to the discouragement that others are trying to pull you into. Believe in yourself. Believe there is always a way to the other side, and believe in the power of sharing your dreams. Because when we share our dreams, there are people listening and they can help us make those dreams come true. So thank you for joining for another episode of Women Winning Their Way. I'm your host, Clara Capano, and I look forward to seeing you next time.